Hey everyone, welcome again to another episode of Disability Landscape. I'm your host, Charlie Bros. This is my co-host, Mark Knudsen. I think we've all met before. Mark, tell us who we have today.
Yeah, today as our guest we have Mai Thor, who has been involved with advocacy probably since she was a young kid maybe or whatever. Just looking at your background. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
So, when and how did you start to get into advocacy and that, would you say?
Oh, I think I probably, have been doing it forever, but
Like in high school and that too, would you say, or was it something after high school?
yeah, I think that, the sort of like desire to, really want to create positive change in the community and things like that was always there, but I didn't really get into it until like college, right?
Okay.
And so I remember one of the very first things that I was able to do was I was involved in like a youth camp kind of a thing that the Council on Disability was able to host for a few days with disabled youth.
So this was a camp for the disabled.
Yep. Okay. And I didn't have the title of camp counselor per se, but that's essentially what I was.
Oh, you were? Okay.
And so like these were kids that were like high school and maybe like about to go off to college.
Okay. And you were in college.
And I was in college at the time, and we stayed with these kids at the U. We were like in a dorm and everything.
Oh, okay.
And it was a lot of fun, and it was really interesting getting to know the kids and, just hearing about their lives and their lived experience. And
they've got disabilities.
They have disabilities, and they were,
Okay.
Aspiring to do sort of the same things too in advocacy. And so, yeah, and that actually spurred my interest in doing policy work too, because we took the kids to the Capitol
Oh, you did that? Okay.
during that experience, and were able to go out onto the floor of the House of Representatives at the Capitol, and got a tour of that. And the kids were in awe. They were just so excited. But,
right, yeah.
but here I am thinking, oh, I want to do this too. One day I want to be out here trying.
You did from that moment.
Yeah, from that moment,
Yeah.
and it was really fun. And at the time, Jesse Ventura was governor.
Oh, he was.
And
We're sorry.
right, but so we were touring the Capitol still with the kids, and we were right outside of the governor's office, and sure enough.
Oh,
Governor
really?
Ventura pops out.
Oh, did he really?
Yeah, somebody gave him the heads up that the kids were there, and so he came out and greeted everybody, and they were all just so excited. So,
Were you aware that Jesse has a disabled daughter?
yes, I was. Yep, I forgot that, but yes, now that you mention it, yep, I did know that.
Well, and you mentioned advocacy, and I think a lot of people with disabilities start as their own self-advocates. And I think, many see that and go, well, if I'm going to do this for myself, I can help a whole lot of other people. Is that kind of where you felt yourself, or you were spurred by these younger kids or high school kids that said, we want to do this, and you go, yeah, so do I. Is that kind of how it works out for you?
I would say, yeah, for sure. There was definitely lots of that, because I think probably lots of folks with disabilities can identify with, the need to be able to advocate for yourself and be informed and navigate various systems, right? That can be really confusing and intimidating, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think nobody knows yourself better than you,
Sure.
right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's great to have allies and a good support system
Right.
with family and friends and stuff. But you know, one thing that I think that folks with disabilities often experience is like they experience you know, not having autonomy over their own decision making, right? Their own bodies and their own minds and
Right.
things like that. And so
Yeah, to come to them at a later,
Right.
in a later time. Yeah.
yeah, so so yeah, absolutely. I think a lot of it had to do with that for sure. And but then, you know, also what you said about like, you know, once you learn how to do that for yourself, then you want to be able to help others to do that also for themselves, right? And so that's definitely a big part of the you know, why I do
Right.
why I've been doing the advocacy that
the
I've done.
process of becoming an advocate like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, in my, you know, own, you know, history, it's seeing a problem and then going, I have to address that problem. With me, it was disabled sports, adapted sports, because there are so many kids in the high school level who can play through sanctioned sports, but once they graduate, they don't have anywhere to go. They don't have. So I created a program that gives them a place to go, and that, you know, that's how I advocate for the people I know.
Yep.
Now, when you were in college, what did you go to college for then?
Well, not the food. No, I'm kidding.
No, no. Yeah, I was trying to think of something.
So I went to Augsburg University for my undergraduate degree, and
Okay.
I majored in communications.
Okay.
And then I got my graduate degree at Metro State University in nonprofit and public administration.
Oh, cool.
So, yeah.
So you met Kristen Burgess then?
Yes. Yep. Yep. Yeah, so Kristen wasn't there
Yeah,
when
I
I
was
was
gonna say
there.
she wasn't there.
Yeah.
At that point.
Yeah.
Yeah,
at
but
that point.
she and I definitely know each other. Yeah.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, because she's at Metro.
She's
been
at Metropolitan.
Yeah, she's
Yep.
been at Metro State now for a while. and
Yeah. Yeah. Oh gosh, I was in graduate school years and years ago, so
yeah, that's
Yeah.
decades
That's
ago.
us too.
yeah. I thought there was probably a little bit of a little bit of a gap between you two.
Yeah.
And that,
Yeah.
so.
Yeah.
So you're associated with the Bush Foundation. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. So so I am a 2021 Bush Fellow,
Okay.
and
We're not worthy. We're not.
a tiny bit of background about the Bush Foundation
Yeah.
is, you know, they are a philanthropy group. They're a nonprofit that provides funding to really amazing, you know, initiatives and projects and organizations throughout Minnesota. And a lot of that is focused on, you know, our BIPOC communities, the indigenous community, and, you know, building up sort of like, you know, addressing like social justice stuff or just other innovative community like led efforts. And so, you know, Bush has been around for ages, right?
But it has nothing to do with.
Our former presidents.
No, different.
Right, yeah, because
Different Bush.
Different Bush.
That's what I assumed when I first saw that.
Yeah.
Looking at your background, I first went with the President
Nope,
Bush.
has nothing to do with George Bush.
Yeah, so it's actually connected with someone at 3M, correct?
Or
Yeah, Archibald and his wife Ethel, I want to say, Bush, who and so like Archie, I think is what he typically went by.
Yeah.
Yeah, he started the Bush Foundation
Okay.
after his connection with 3M. It's, you know,
Yeah.
apparently like he helped 3M come through a difficult financial time and, you know, increase its profits and stuff. And so after he became a millionaire, he started all this charitable work. And so, you know, that was Bush. And it's been going ever since. And so it's really great that his legacy continues through this work.
Okay.
And so with the Bush Fellowship Program, which is a part of the Bush Foundation, it's an annual program that people in Minnesota and in surrounding states like North Dakota, South Dakota, and the federally recognized tribes can apply for each year. And it's a 2-year fellowship program. And so since I was selected in 2021, I'm actually on the last leg of my fellowship. I'll finish mine in August, this coming August. And it's gone so fast, right? It it's like watching your kids grow in front of your eyes, go so fast. So it's been an amazing experience, a really wonderful, life-changing, impactful experience, and I'm always telling people how truly blessed and lucky I am to have had this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, because I know not a lot of people get to have it, right?
Because how many people do they take each year?
I want to say it's usually every year it's a cohort of about 25 fellows who get chosen. And it's all, all kinds of folks, right?
All kinds of backgrounds.
All kinds of backgrounds.
Disability, able-bodied.
Yep. And so, folks are, so the Bush Fellowship Program really is about, it's unique in the sense that it's not like, other fellowship programs where it's like research-based or project-based. It's really about you. And Bush is always like, we're giving you all this money because we want to invest in you. It's a leadership development fellowship, essentially. And what that means is that, Bush wants this opportunity for their fellows to really just be like, to envision yourself as the best version of yourself ever, without thinking about any of the barriers that you might come across or challenges or anything. Like, if you could just be like the most badass Mark that you could ever think of, that's what the Bush Fellowship is about, right?
He peaked years ago.
Yeah.
Well, gosh, I could have called you up, Mark.
Yeah.
When I applied. But yeah, I mean, so it's really about pushing yourself and challenging yourself and stretching yourself and really seeing yourself as, somebody at your highest potential and your highest capacity, right? And just, and when you start thinking about yourself like that, it really opens up your mind, right, and your perspective.
Yeah, because I'm thinking that because of the variety of backgrounds for everyone, I mean, they more or less have a guideline for you, or do you define your own?
You define your own, because leadership development is different for everybody, right? And that's the great thing about being a fellow is, Bush is so understanding of the fact that, leadership development, the journey of leadership development is not like this linear start and end thing, right? Like it ebbs and flows and it's up and down and has peaks and valleys, and it could even be like circular, right?
Right.
And so it's different for everybody, and and so they're always saying, you chart your own path. I
was just going to ask you, did they?
Yep, absolutely. And
I mean, you set some goals.
Yes.
Because I would assume they want to get a sense of
for sure
progression.
Yep.
Doesn't matter to us what you are aiming to do.
Right.
But we want to see that you're achieving.
Pretty much,
or getting close to achieving.
For sure. So I mean, they definitely want you to, have a work plan for yourself and, like a budget for yourself and things like that. And they want you to make good connections. And I'm really lucky that I have a lot of really great mentors and other folks supporting my work. So that's been wonderful. But they also have you work with a coach. to sort of like, kind of keep you accountable and to make
was gonna
sure
say
you're
that, yeah.
you're doing what you're supposed to be doing, and but also to give you advice and to just listen to you, And so I meet with my coach every month, every month or so, and that's been great. But I think, as disabled folks, I think it's already even more difficult, I think, in general, to really see yourself as somebody who, with your potential and your capacity to be, to aspire to something higher, right? Because we have so many things against us all the time.
Right,
And so,
and the general public
Right.
has all these misconceptions, so they don't even know how to interpret us until you get out working and you get in a setting where
Yeah.
people see you every day, and they no longer see the wheelchair or the disability, and they realize, oh yeah, you're just like everyone else. It's just that's your way of doing things.
Yeah, and I think it's hard, just because, with us, I mean, we have a lot of like internalized ableism too that we have to get over, and then we have to like remind ourselves, that we're more than just our disabilities, right? Even though that is a part of our identity, and to remember that we can sort of like challenge ourselves and increase our own potential if we can, if we think that way.
And with this fellowship, have you found that it's opened new opportunities or new challenges for you, or and what do you hope the final outcome is when it ends?
Yeah, so in addition to the leadership development component, which is the main component of this fellowship, what Bush also wants to see happen is that you do some work in your community that is transformative. And so that's kind of a big word, right? Like transformative change.
Right, yeah.
Like, what does that mean? And I guess for me, I've never really had any formal training on, how to do transformative change. But I can say that, it's something that you do in your community that has large impact, right? So we're talking about like, changing, not just changing maybe policy or systems, but maybe hearts and minds too, right?
Yeah.
And so that focus of my fellowship is disability justice. And so what I've been trying to do for the last, over a year now, year and a half now, I guess, is learning about disability justice, and just knowing how it began and why it's important, how it differs between the disability rights framework, and which is something that I think most people are familiar with.
Sure.
And then also how we can build up a framework of disability justice in Minnesota. And so I've been,
Of disability justice, I would assume that compromises a lot of things. I mean, it's just everyone, when you think of disabled folks and justice, the first thing is accessibility, but you're also talking more beyond,
absolutely.
more than just accessibility, correct?
Yep. And I think that's something that I think, because disability justice, I think, is a fairly newer sort of like framework that not a lot of people are familiar with.
You're right, yeah, because I haven't
Heard of,
I haven't really heard of it.
Well, so I think the distinction between disability justice and disability rights is what I often like to tell people is, disability rights, disability justice is an extension of disability rights, right? Just
Okay.
kind of like what you're saying, that,
Accessibility.
it goes
is a
beyond
right.
just accessibility, right?
Yeah.
It goes beyond compliance. It goes beyond ADA. It goes beyond rehab or Olmstead or all those things that I think your HR officer
Right.
is going to know about.
Oh, right.
So, but the thing about disability rights versus disability justice is that disability rights is really rooted in it's centered around you know the the disability rights movement sort of like came off the coattails of the civil rights movement, right? And you know, when disabled folks,
the ADA. And
yep,
all- yeah.
when disabled folks saw that, like, you know, civil rights was happening, they were like, you know, all these rights that, like, you know, the African American community is trying to fight for, we want some of that, right? And
Right.
so it was really about equality and, you know, preventing discrimination and you know, compliance, right? And making sure that we were seen equally under the law and had same protection under the law. But you know, a lot of those things were, a lot of the folks who advocated for all of those things, which are amazing, don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to downplay those
Oh,
things,
no,
right?
right.
Like,
But they're like they're the foundation.
they're the foundation,
foundation.
but
This
they
is
were
an extension of
also
sorts.
started by white, able-bodied folks who wanted to advocate for their disabled children, right?
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
And so you can make the argument that the disability rights framework was built off of that it was centered off of that white perspective. So what that means for folks today is that, you know, if you are, you know, let's use myself as an example, because that way I don't make anybody mad.
there you go. There you go.
You know, I identify as a Hmong woman, right?
Okay.
I have a disability. I'm a single mom, and so, you know, is it
Check.
You're right. I check a lot of the boxes off, but is it just as easy for me to get supports and services, and to get a job and to get a good education as it is for my white disabled counterparts who, you know, reap the same benefits of the disability rights movement? Absolutely not. It's not, because the disparities still exist, right?
Sure.
Yeah.
For folks who have multiple marginalized identities like myself and are also identify as disabled, it's still hard. It's still really hard, and there's no arguing against that, right? And so
Right.
that's what disability justice addresses, is that, you know, folks with disabilities are not monoliths, right? We're not just about, you know, the white perspective. We're many identities, all in one, and many of us have multiply oppressed identities. And, you know, it's about our value and worth, the fact that we are not disposable, and that, that we shouldn't be measured by our ability to produce or make money. So that's what disability justice is about. You know, it's about our inherent value, and the intersectionality that we all possess as humans, right?
Right.
Multiple identities, right? So, so that's kind of the distinction there. And the disability justice movement began really in the Bay Area in California.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
And it, you know, was originated amongst a bunch of BIPOC, queer, disabled folks who are like, yeah, the disability rights movement is wonderful, right? You know, I mean, life would really suck still without, you know, the disability rights movement,
Right,
without ADA, all those things, right?
But we're still underserved.
We're still being oppressed. You know, we're still oppressed. We're still marginalized because of all of these things, right? And so they started this movement, you know, the disability justice movement. And the great thing is that other communities throughout the U.S. have their own like disability justice collectives now. You know, like Chicago has a rich history of disability justice. Detroit does. Portland does. Toronto, you know, if you want to go even further to Canada, Toronto does. And I've been lucky as a fellow to have been able to visit some of these communities and meet with folks to talk about how did this work start in your community, right? And so I'm trying to kind of bring that information that I've been, you know, learning about as I meet with these folks in other communities to figure out how can we do similar work here in Minnesota? How can we start our own collective here in Minnesota to fit our own unique needs, right? Because Minnesota is a large Midwest state, right?
Right. Oh yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
you know, in the metro is so different from the rural
Yeah,
and
the rural. Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah.
but we want to be able to touch upon the things that matter most to everybody, no matter where you live, right? If
Yeah.
you identify as disabled, we want disability justice to be able to be something that you can be a part of and you can inform, because disability justice is definitely a community-informed movement.
Absolutely.
So that's what I've been working on for the last year. And what I'll also say is that disability justice is based off of 10 principles when its founders created it, and I don't remember every 10 off the top of my head. But what
Dang, I was just going to ask you.
what I will say is folks can go onto the Sins Invalid website, which I'm sure is like sinsinvalid.org or something like
Yeah.
that.
We'll definitely add a link.
Yeah, and learn more about these 10 principles. But one principle that I will talk about a little bit more is the 8th principle, which is interdependence. And I love talking about that particular principle because as we're trying to build up this framework for Minnesota, we want to honor these principles, right? And we want to continue, we're not trying to reinvent the wheel. We're trying to just make it fit our needs here in Minnesota, right? And interdependence is going to be super important because it's all about how we are, in community together, right? No matter what our ability level. Like we're all in this together, trying to achieve justice for everybody, that we should rely on one another and be allies for one another. Everything that you and I do impacts each other, right? And everybody around us. And that we're doing all of this work on land that belonged to Indigenous folks, and that we need to honor that and share that. And so, I think interdependence is just a really beautiful thing to remember as disability justice is being done, no matter where you are, right? So, I'll
Well, I appreciate that. You did mention, I do want to mention real quick, the different groups that you have to help in this or working to help in this. Minnesota has a very diverse population, and that does not take away from people of that diverse population being disabled. And so, everybody should be served the same. On that note, Mark, I think unfortunately we have to wrap it up.
Yes, we do.
Mai Thor, thank you for being with us today. We'll give people that website, and we'll hopefully spread some more information around. Thank you for being with us, Mark.
Yeah, it's been, Maya, thank you for joining us. I'm glad we got the Bush thing straightened out because that's, sure everyone thinks
if anything, I want you to,
Highlight
that's
that
the main
part.
takeaway.
It's not Bush president related,
Right.
Bush 3M related. All right.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I'm Charlie Bros. This is Mark Knutson. This has been Disability Landscape. We'll see y'all next time.